like to welcome everybody to the ASI Academic Strategic Initiatives Committee. And I want to remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube for the general public, and to allow all audio and video is being captured. We've got a packed agenda today, so let's get started. And Heather, will you call the roll, please?
Yes. Dr. Mohammed Barber, Mr. Colby Burks, Ms. Lori Harper.
Here.
Okay. Ms. Karen Hoover.
Here.
Mr. Lucas Finzer.
Here.
Mr. Richard Nelson.
Here.
Ms. Vijay Rabachandran. Dr. Robert Statt.
Here.
Mr. Kevin Weaver.
Here.
Thank you. We have quorum.
Thank you. The minutes of our August 10th meeting were in your materials. Are there any objections to those minutes as presented? If none, then I move they be approved as distributed. We'll now move on to give President Thompson an opportunity to address the committee with any general counsel updates.
Okay. Good morning, everyone. For those of you all who are suffering any sort of ailments, I give you my best and blessings, and hopefully you'll get better. Heather, I hope you are. But good to see everybody. There's a lot to update. I won't make it long because I know you got a big agenda. Some of you know this already. We're working with KSU to look at their financial situation, as well as looking at how we can take KSU into the future with a thriving HBCU in this state. We're working diligently and hard. We were able to hire Susan Krause, who's the former treasurer at UK, as a part-time person on our team, working with Greg Rush and others at KSU to make sure we kind of make the cash flow, bills paid, look exactly where we're at. So far, that's going really well, but it's been a lot of work. I'm working with the board and the administration to make sure we get students in this year, and they're doing a good job at that. You know, there's some residential hall issues and a variety of other things to get it going, but we are getting it going. The item I will tell you is KSU is up in enrollment, maybe one of the largest classes they've had in a long time, and that's good. Student success is improving. And so, you know, not all is bleak, no matter what you're reading in the paper, but it is a long road. And CPE, as you all know, with the governor's executive order, puts us in a place of oversight. And we're taking that very seriously. By November 1, a couple of things will have happened. One is that we will kind of know the direction of what we're going to have to ask the governor and the General Assembly to help us on as far as the dollars we'll need. Number two, we'll lay out a management and improvement plan. Number three, we'll have a way to think about the kind of programs we will ask for money to make it really programs of distinction, if you will, not the old POD we had before, but ones that can truly have KSU to be a sustainable and thriving institution. I'm sure some of this may come before you, so to give you a heads up, that is coming. But as a whole, things we're heavily engaged. And once again, we are verifying and making sure that our eye will be on the ball for the needs of the state in this case, and for the needs of KSU. This past few weeks has been very busy for me in a variety of ways, including testifying in front of several legislative committees. One, I'll just mention a couple. One's been the Capital Planning Advisory Board, where we are talking with them about the need for about $700 million in bond asset preservation. And that is about a 10th of what the study has shown that's needed in the state. We have over a $7 billion problem in that area. We'll also be asking for about $80 million in technology for our public campuses. And we're going to be asking for about $2 million to really finish out, as Vidya knows well, this student portal to facilitate courses and a variety of other things. And we need about that much to just get it going, get it up, and get it running. And we're going to be looking at also about $1 million for the regional optical network. As you all know, that's part of what CP is assigned to do. So those are just some ideas. We'll be asking for money for performance funding also, but you'll hear a lot more about that as we solidify everything, as we meet with presidents, CBOs, and the finance committee of CPE and so on. I also had a chance to testify in front of Senator Givens. He invited me to come and testify in front of the Race and Access and Opportunity Committee that was put into law last session, and a variety of things that you already know, but I just want to remind you, they have been really impressed with what higher education has done, CPE has done with higher ed, in focusing heavily on the resources that we have, the incentives, as well as our policies that have been able to close gaps faster than right now, I think, any state in the nation from our base. And just to give you some opportunities, since we're up about overall about 6.4% are underrepresented minority students, but we're down about 16% in overall students for a variety of reasons, as you all know. I mean, college going is down even more. We're about 50% now from seniors from high school going to college. Our adult learners are down. KCTCS is down tremendously. We also, we have to get more people engaged to get where we need to go. We're still above the trajectory in our 20 by 30 goal, no doubt, but we're going to have to do better in getting some of those students engaged with us. Now, the happy part of this is that our retention rate's about 80% across our four-year campuses, but who would have ever thought we would have gotten there, right? Our graduation rates are up. As a matter of fact, the URN retention rate's up 13.2 percentage points, whereas our overall, increased about 8 percentage points. So we're raising everybody up to the goal, and some who are farther behind, we're raising up faster. We also have credentials that are up 60% for underrepresented minorities in our community colleges, and compared to a 30% increase overall. So, and I keep on going with this. We've doubled about 17.5% our overall degree and credential attainment for everybody, and about 36% for underrepresented minorities. So two areas we have to be concerned about as I look at this are low income, we're not moving as fast, nor are we getting more adult learners engaged. Those are two areas you'll hear a lot about today in the strategic agenda, I'm sure. But Madam Chair, there's a whole lot going on. If I'd spent all my time telling you this, then we'd never get to all the stuff you need to get to. So I'm going to shut up now and be willing to take any questions from anyone.
Aaron, you said the going rate is about 50% from high school. Do you have a feel for what the national average is?
About 70%.
Ouch.
And for some, Travis, tell me if I'm wrong. That's the percent in my mind now, Dr. Stat. I've been saying this so much, I hope I got it right, but I think we're significantly below.
Yeah, you're correct, Dr. Thompson. So it's in the high 60s nationally. And then if we include our out of state, then we're in, a little above the mid 50s. So 56, around that range.
Okay.
Any other questions? Thank you, Madam Chair.
All right, thank you. We'll move on to the proposed academic programs. We have 3 programs to approve today. The campus's representatives are here to present on those. Melissa Bell can introduce each of these programs. Melissa?
Thank you, Chair Harper. So as you know, we do have 3 programs today. So let's start with the NKU programs. So first up, we have a bachelor's degree in education, culture, and society. So this is an education-related degree, but it's not a degree that leads to teacher certification. The target market for this is students looking for jobs in youth programs outside of school, community outreach agencies, nonprofit organizations that educate the public or specific constituencies. So keeping that in mind, I'm going to turn it over to our representatives from NKU.
Good morning. My name is Sarah Runge, and I am a professor here at NKU. I have worked with this program in developing it. So the program provides undergraduate students an opportunity to earn a degree in education without a teaching certificate. That is what Melissa explained to you. We have had several students throughout, more than several students throughout our teacher education program that we are targeting this degree to. So there are 4 different groups that we will target our students. Undergraduate students who are unsuccessful in the teacher education program. Those are students that cannot, for various reasons, don't want to become teachers. They get into the program, decide that this is not for them. They can make a seamless transition into this program and still graduate with this degree, but not earn that teaching certification. Undergraduate students who have invested that time and energy into the program and then decide that they don't want to do it, as I just said. Undergraduate students who want to come into the program but cannot pass that Praxis 1 exam. This allows them to continue into education since the core courses are education related. So we can help them still continue on in the program and earn that degree. And undergraduate students who are interested in education related fields that don't involve teaching. So we have a lot of students who really want to work in fields that have education involved in them, but they don't want to teach. And that comes out in the EDU 104 course, that orientation to education course that is taught at the very beginning. We find students who say, listen, I really want to be a teacher, but it's not, I don't want to be in the classroom. So what else can I do? And so we talk to them in those individual conferences when they're building their graduation plan and say, here are some other things that you can do. But we didn't have that option for them to move forward in it until we developed this program. Are there any questions?
Any questions?
Thank you for that information. Is there any programs available currently that will allow students to provide a supporting role without directly being teachers, that they could, have a different degree or different kind of background that would still put them in the same spot career-wise without having to go through this particular specific program that would still, allow them to become supporting within the school systems? I guess, in other words, we have those roles that are being filled today by people that are not directly in the teaching role. So what kind of backgrounds do those people have versus what's going to be different with this program?
So are you referring to programs that are already on our campus that allow students to do something similar?
Either your campus or anywhere in our state.
So we talked to, we did reach out to other campuses, and we do have other programs. What sets our program apart is that our core really focuses on education. So the core courses are education related, and then they select other tracks in youth and family development, workforce development, in the diversity related fields. And what this allows the students to do when they have that education core, it provides them that ability to go into a setting such as if you have a student who really wants to focus on workforce development and youth and family, so they can choose those two tracks. It gives them that background where they can go into, say, a nonprofit setting and work in developing training materials that gives them that edge because they have that background where they have the curriculum development, they have the management background that they wouldn't normally have if they just did org leadership or taking a different set here at NKU.
Hi, Jenny Fair, Dean of the College of Education from NKU as well. Thank you for the question because it's an important one. So I think while there are others who have been generally credentialed and can work in the settings that we have described, I think the intentionality behind the preparation in this program would prepare them more uniquely and thoroughly for work with families and communities and students. And frankly, we see it not only as a completer degree option, but we see it as a way to intentionally recruit students who are interested in an education pathway. Perhaps they're interested in higher education and in services in higher education. So it'd be an excellent way to get them started on that kind of pathway. We think it's a fantastic way to involve potential international students. There is a lot of interest in Western education and American education, and our programs currently do not allow us to serve that kind of population at an undergraduate or initial level because of the restrictions with clinical settings and experiences. So having some kind of option for our international audiences, we've already at NKU had some good questions from potential partners in East Asia about this program if it were to be provided. So I think we can meet a new need, and we can better prepare an existing need as well.
Yeah, Vivi, I like to actually challenge all the ed folks on here to think about this down the road. I think we are going to go in a new path. I'm sure we're going to go in a new path of getting more people prepared to be college and career advisors. Having this kind of information could really help them to do that. So I do believe probably there needs to be, as this degree is approved, down the road, some areas that could be added to this. Right now, our counseling programs does not do this. And so I know we're going to be moving heavily toward pushing for this in a variety of spaces to have more of these folks inside of our institutions to prepare students to think about going in the teaching profession, to prepare students to think about going to college and some other areas. So if I'm going to interpret your question, I think one of the things that I would say is that as we start innovatively thinking about something other than just a teaching certificate, that's the direction that we're probably going to be pushing in Kentucky.
You know, one of my follow-up questions is also, as part of putting this course together, I'm assuming you've done focus groups and talked to, potentially where they would end up post getting this degree. Have you worked with the districts, the large districts? Have you spoken with people at JCPS to see where there might be opportunities for people coming out of this program, or, any of the other places, or even in Northern Kentucky, where would they go? What kinds of roles would they take? And, what is the need for people or graduates from this program?
So we look at this is going to be a very individualized program. So students who come into this program will sit down with advisors and work through what they want to do. So they have, as I said, there's 3 tracks that they work on, and they sit down and decide. So if they say, listen, I really want to focus on youth and family and diversity, So they will design what that looks like. And then we will say, with that, these are the options that you can go into. So you might want to work at a museum center, and you might want to be the education development person at a museum center or at the YMCA. And so we talk to them about here are your potential jobs. And we have worked with our advising center to map out, here are the jobs that you can do if you choose this pathway. Here are the jobs that you can do in this pathway. And we know that there are that need because we've done that vetting out in the community to see what is it that you can do with these potential career choices.
So are there any other questions on this first program?
Melissa, let me just ask a simple question. Actually, the explanations have been done greatly to clarify things in my mind. But you said there was the percentage. What's the percentage that are unsuccessful in getting teacher certification? It seems like this is a second place degree that way. How many don't get certified that go into that?
At NKU specifically, I'm going to have to look to NKU for that.
Yeah, I thought that NKU would have that. Yeah.
So when we look at who is not successful in getting certified, we are talking about 1 or 2 students at the end of their, if we look at them in student teaching in their clinical semester, there may be 1 or 2. If we look at them throughout the entire program from the time they're admitted, we may have maybe 3, 5, 10 from the time they're admitted before they get into clinical that change their mind, that we would then be able to help seamlessly move over into this new program and work with them to continue into that. In terms of the ones that don't pass the praxis, we have, if we look at that number, I'm not sure. Ginny, do you have a number on that?
Yeah, we're talking about a handful of students who are unsuccessful in their program. And we're talking about another handful of students who choose not to pursue education. They have their clinical experiences and they think, oh, you know, I'm not sure I want to be in a classroom, but I certainly don't want to lose that education perspective. Matter of fact, anecdotally, I can talk about several who have decided they want to pursue some kind of higher education, working in student affairs in higher education or something like that. But they don't want to lose a student focus, but the classroom is not where they want to be. So I don't think the majority, quite frankly, of our potential candidates in this program will be those who were unsuccessful. I think that there will be a handful who may transition to that, but I think it will be a viable option all on its own because of the uniqueness of its offering and because it can be tailored specifically to the skills and competencies that the candidates really want to develop. I don't know. I hope that answers your question.
Pretty much. I see you've got, I think it's 25 students per year into this. And so the vast majority are choosing this as a primary option as opposed to a secondary choice.
That's what we anticipate. Matter of fact, we have a handful of students already who are interested, who are coming in as freshmen, who are interested in this pathway as a starter. And that's just with some informal conversations without it being on the books, so to speak.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you all. So I think we can go on to NKU's second program on the agenda today is a master's degree in cybersecurity. This is a really hot field right now, and this program builds on NKU's existing bachelor's degree in the field. And Northern Kentucky University is a designated National Center of Academic Excellence in Information Assurance and Cyber Defense Institution. So I am going to turn it over to our colleagues at NKU to provide further details.
Okay, hello, I'm James Walden, I'm a professor of computer science and director of NKU's Center for Information Security. I'm also the author of the proposal for the Masters in Cybersecurity. We've actually developed quite a bit of cybersecurity curriculum since I started at NKU in 2005, including minors and certificate programs, both the undergraduate and graduate level, and most recently, our Bachelor of Cybersecurity degree. We also have a track in cybersecurity. So we've got 66 students currently in the Bachelor of Cybersecurity and 64 in the cybersecurity track for a total of 130 students, plus however many are doing certificates and minors as well. So we've got a large community engaged in cybersecurity education. And we also have good relationships with the large companies in the area who are hiring cybersecurity students. So with my center, we have an advisory board made up of chief information security officers and such from the local area, and they provided advice in helping us design this proposal. So the proposed Master of Cybersecurity is a completely online degree taught in an accelerated 7-week format. There are 30 total credit hours or 10 classes and 6 terms per year. So you can complete the degree in under a year. If you take 5 terms, you'll be able to take 10 classes and complete the degree. And we've set up a carousel schedule, so that's doable for our students. As Melissa mentioned, cybersecurity is a very hot area. I've actually pulled up a browser tab with the current stats for Kentucky. There's 2,300 open jobs just in Kentucky, and there's 2,200 in the greater Cincinnati area where we're located. So there's ample areas for students to find employment. The audience the degree is aimed at are professionals in other fields. It's designed for career changers who want to move into cybersecurity because they have an interest or they've seen the job opportunities in the field. And it is a pure cybersecurity degree. So unlike Murray State's degree, which is a cybersecurity management degree, our degree focuses on core technical skills and how to be a cybersecurity analyst or cybersecurity engineer, as opposed to being a manager doing cybersecurity. So that's my brief summary. Do you have any questions for me?
Yes, I do. As I read here, you're phasing out the MS in computer information technology, and you said this program will not replace that. Can you give me a little background on why you're phasing one out and where this fits?
Let me turn that over to Maureen Doyle. She's chair of the Department of Computer Science, and she can know more about the Masters of IT.
So our Masters in IT was a primarily in-person 17-week program. And that program, we had a lot of international students. And we were, our enrollment was declining year by year. So in 2018-19, we sat down to look at our programs of what we needed to support the area. And we looked at moving and beginning to work with AP and offering an online program. So we put both our Masters in Computer Science and our Masters in CIT on hiatus. And we worked with AP, we did market studies, we did surveys of the area of what was the highest need. And although IT is a high need, there was nothing up here with a Masters in Cybersecurity for the state. And so when we were looking at what we wanted to provide to the community that they were in most need of, it was cybersecurity professionals, career changers. It's an extremely popular field with zero unemployment. It's also a field that we have a women in cybersecurity group where we try to recruit diverse student populations to it. If this is successful, our intent is to probably bring back the IT in the 7-week online AP format. But we like to take risks, and yet we like to manage our risk. And so our first one is to go out and see how this works. If this works well, we developed a parallel master's in IT program that will fit together with this quite well if it's successful.
Thank you.
Which we 100% believe it will be.
Yeah, I guess I just want to say that I appreciate you looking at those programs you have that I'm not saying they're out of date. I'm not. I'll leave that up to you all to say. But, you know, what you're putting in is in date. And that is thinking about the future. So the idea of what sounded good on paper that existed 10, 15, 20 years ago may no longer be the cutting edge. I'm the chair of Baptist Health, and I can tell you this master's degree is exactly going in the direction that you need to be thinking in this particular area. The idea that you can tag on, I'll just say this now as the president of CPE, the idea if you're going to put master's degrees in, they need to have something more complete than just getting students involved in it, right? It needs to have a more direct correlation with the future of where we need to go in this state anyway. And having employers engaged on the front end is exactly the way you do this. So I appreciate this degree. I just wanted to say.
Thank you. We had a lot of fun creating it. Well, I did. They did all the work. So,
Well, that's the first thing I think of when I think cybersecurity is fun.
yeah.
It is a fun field.
It is.
And we do have an active cybersecurity team that participates in capture the flag competitions and the like, and they do accept both graduates and undergraduates.
Yes.
Any other questions? If not,
Chair Harvey,
go ahead.
may I make a comment? Just, this is not specific to any of the programs that we're approving, but our committee reviews a lot of programs, and we go through the process of trying to vet it and approve it. The one thing that might be helpful from a CPE standpoint, I feel like, maybe not an annual basis, but on some kind of cadence, it might be great to get some data back to CPE, the programs that we are approving. What does enrollment look like in these programs a year out? What does it look like 2 years out? What does it look like 3 years out? And if we can have the folks that are requesting approvals on new programs to share that data back with the CPE staff, then it might be helpful for us on an ongoing basis to see how many of the programs we're approving are bringing in the kind of enrollment that people think they will, because it will help future decision making as new programs come, because we can then help them vet the programs in a different way, as to based on the results that we're seeing as to the take rate, the enrollment, the placements in different, employment sectors, because, everybody has great intentions coming into these programs, but are they really bearing out the results that everybody hopes that they will? And I think we need to start tracking that.
Yeah, and one thing I'll add for the cybersecurity, our undergrad degree went live last year, and we're pretty conservative in our estimates. We take risks, but they're measured risks.
Right.
And we've already exceeded in our undergraduate program, and we've had people calling us for this.
Right.
So we believe we are taking a risk. I think any new program is, but we think this is the best risk we can take to increase enrollment and improve our reputation in cybersecurity in the area. And I think supplying the numbers would be helpful to us too.
Right. And I 100% agree, because what we might see is programs like cybersecurity or some other specific programs that we know is going to be the future. We might see that a lot of people are gravitating towards those, and other things that we might perceive as a need for the industry may or may not turn out to be true. There's no question a cybersecurity degree is going to be highly desirable, but is that true of some of the other ones we may have approved over the last 3 years? We don't know. And knowing that from a metric standpoint would be very helpful for us to just make decisions based on data rather than just trying to, what we think might be a need today may or may not turn out to be true, because the half a dozen students that wanted it may decide that they no longer want to stay in that program and might go sign up for cybersecurity for all you know, right? So, yeah.
No, good thought, Vidya. I appreciate that. We'll definitely take that as a
Laura,
takeaway from today.
Sorry, if I could just jump in. One quick comment. I'd like to commend,
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm sorry, I'd like to commend Professor Walden for being aware of the need that's out there in cybersecurity, such an important area, and then crafting a program that meets that need. And then to add to Vidya's thought, I think it would be good for us to hear back from the universities when we do approve a new program to see what kind of enrollment, where enrollment is a year, 2 years, 3 years down the line. So, but I'm excited for this program though at NKU. I commend you all for putting it together. Looks like it's meeting a real need, and I'm excited to hear about the enrollment in a couple years down the line. So very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so we have two programs from Northern Kentucky University. One is the Education, Culture, and Society BA, and then the Cybersecurity. Does anyone entertain a motion and take these jointly together and or keep them separate?
Lori, Richard here. I move that we approve both programs together in one vote.
Thank you.
I'll
We have a
second that.
motion and
I'll
a
second
second
that.
from Dr. Stack. Thank you, Dr. Stack. Any further discussion? If not, all in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Motion carries. Ms. Bell, we'll move on to Western.
Thank you. So WKU has before you a Bachelor of Arts in Legal Studies. So this is a program that's designed to be taken in conjunction with another major to provide a better understanding of the law as it relates to fields such as history, science, and ethics. The institution already has a minor, a very successful minor in this field, and they want to elevate it. So I am going to turn it over to the WKU reps.
Hello, my name is Eric Reed. I'm a faculty member in the history department, and I'm here to speak a little bit about our minor. I'm here as a co-author with Scott Lastly in the political science department of this major. Let me tell you a bit about the program and our hopes for it. One is that it's 36 credit hours, of which half are in a core and half are electives. The core is in history and political science, but you can take electives across 11 departments and 4 academic colleges at WKU. So it's really meant to train very broadly so that students graduate with a skill set that's broad, that includes interdisciplinary methodologies, analytical thinking, critical thinking, ability to do independent research, a really strong, broad skill set. Now, student demand, I think, is going to be very good. We've done some polling of our students who are currently in the minor. And as Ms. Bell said earlier, we have around 60 to 70 students in our minor, which is a very large minor at WKU. And we polled them, and more than 80% of them said they would major in legal studies if it were available to them. So I think it's going to be very strong internal demand among our current student body. We have a good number of pre-law students already. Between 60 and 90 students per year take the LSAT, the law school admission test. And many of them end up going to law schools in Kentucky, especially U of L and UK. So I really think that just based on these numbers, we're going to have a strong major, and we don't have to worry about demand. Now, in terms of outcomes, we think that the employer demand and sort of postgraduate outcomes are going to be very good as well. We have the Gray Associates data, Bureau of Labor Statistics. The Gray Associates data puts our graduates in at least the 75th percentile, depending on how you measure the legal studies minor or major rather. And adjacent professions such as public administration, homeland security, and others are growing very rapidly and have good salary outcomes for graduates, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics data. And then finally, some of you have alluded to costs and return on investment, and we think it will be very good because we won't have to add new faculty to teach this curriculum. It's built out of a strong major or a strong minor into a major. We expect it will generate good income with very little investment on our part. So thank you very much, and we'd love to take some questions.
will the students get a certificate or anything for paralegal studies?
No, in fact, we have a paralegal studies program at WKU. It's called Professional Legal Studies is what we refer to it as. And it's a separate but related curriculum. One of the core courses is a paralegal studies course. We hope that there will be some linkages between the two majors, but they're distinct.
Okay.
And we do offer both an undergraduate 4-year program in paralegal studies as well as a certificate.
Yeah. So it would be entirely possible for someone graduating in legal studies major to pick up a paralegal studies certificate along the way.
Any other questions? If not, what is the committee's thoughts on the Western Kentucky Legal Studies BA?
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Thank you, Dr. Stack and Mr. Weaver. We have a motion and a second. All in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Opposed, like sign. Thank you. Motion carries.
Thank you.
Okay, moving down on our agenda, I'm sure it's no doubt that you've heard that about CPE's $2.1 million grant we received from the James Graham Brown Foundation in Louisville to house the Kentucky Student Success Collaboration. It's a unique initiative to drive improvement at Kentucky's 2-year and 4-year campuses. Today, I'm pleased to introduce its new executive director, Lily Mesa McKinley. Lily has worked in higher education for more than 15 years, serving in an array of areas that include crisis counseling, community engagement, success, access and success support, career development, and strategic partnerships. Most recently, she has served as the Assistant Vice President for Career Development and Strategic Partnerships at Bellarmine University, with her efforts focused on collaboration, partnership development, and student success. Before I turn it over to her, President Thompson, do you have any additional comments? If not, I guess President Thompson may have left. So
he had to step
Lily.
away. Hi, everyone. It's so nice to meet you all. Thank you for having me today. I'm so excited to have the privilege and the opportunity to work with our campus partners across Kentucky on some innovative and exciting strategies and collaboration around student success. You know, our ultimate goal is the CPE 60% attainment by 2030, and we are going to be helping our institutional partners, you know, focusing on our equity and also helping move the needle on, you know, retention and attainment. Before working with Bellarmine University, I also worked with 55,000 Degrees in Louisville, Kentucky, and many of you may be familiar with that collaborative initiative to help increase education attainment. And it was, you know, there that I really understood the cross-sector power of bringing different community stakeholders together to address a common problem, and how the process for how we go about working together can really have a significant impact on our success. So I'm very excited. Our first steps, I came on board a month ago, and we've had some great initial conversations. We're getting out to all of our campus partners for those listening sessions to really hear where are they having successes, where are some of their greatest needs, in order to identify opportunities to share what they're learning with other campuses, but also to kind of aggregate where do we have common challenges so that we can provide some more professional development, so that we can leverage some national partners and resources to provide technical assistance. And we have some really exciting partnerships in the work already. We are also really focused on hiring 2 additional team members to join this collaborative. And hopefully in the next week or 2, we will have finalized those positions. So we'll be fully staffed, off and running. And I think, you know, I am excited about all the great work happening at CPE that we get to participate in, and also the great work happening at our campuses. I'm happy to answer any questions if anybody has any.
Any questions? All right, if not, thank you so much. Glad to have you on our team.
Thank you.
CPU staff will release a second return on investment report next month, which provides information on typical college costs, grants, scholarships, loan amounts, salaries for members of the Kentucky high school class of 2011. While the full council will get a look at its findings, Travis Maurice and Gracie Thea are going to provide a review today of the data. So Travis, I'll turn it to you.
Thank you, Chair Harper. As Chair Harper said, I'm Travis Muncie, the Executive Director of Data Advanced Analytics, and joining me will be our lead researcher, which is Dr. G. Dye, also known as Grace, within our unit. We just want to give you all kind of a sneak peek of some of the higher level, results that were received from the report before we release a larger report in the next few weeks. So Dr. Dye actually, she headed this research with our partners at the Kentucky Center for Statistics, or KY Stats. And she did a great job. You will notice, it's a little different than our initial ROI 1.0 or our initial iteration of the return on investment report. This is much more focused on affordability and affordability for students. So with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Grace so she can give us a quick rundown of the research content. So Grace.
Thank you, Travis. So the entire return on investment study includes 6 major content areas as listed in the slide. So first, we included every high school graduates from the graduating class of 2011 to look at the cohort profile, in-state, out-state college going completion rates. And we include students who enrolled in a Kentucky public post-secondary institution to look at their cost of attendance, grants and scholarships, net cost, and cumulative loans. We only included students who had a UI wage record when it came to analysis related to wages, such as loan repayments, annual earnings, and entry-level earnings. We calculated the debt-to-income ratio to assess students' ability to repay their loan debts. And the intergenerational mobility is examined to understand the contribution of higher education to economic mobility. So for this presentation, we'll just highlight 1 or 2 key findings from each of those content areas. Now I'm turning it back to Travis to start with the costs.
Thank you, Grace. So just to start out, we wanted to look at kind of, instead of just looking at the normal net price, we wanted to break it out by degree level and also low income and non-low income to see, really what percentage of grants and scholarships were covered or what percentage of the cost of attendance from a student was covered by grants and scholarships, and then broken out by those different areas. So, COA is of course the cost of attendance, and that's going to include basically most of the costs that a student would incur. That would be room and board, tuition, books, things of that nature. One of the key takeaways that we did see with this study that, we did anticipate was that, for low income students, they actually had more of their cost of attendance paid from grants and scholarships. But of course they are also more likely to receive certain types of aid, like Pell Grant, the CAP grant, and then any institutional need-based grants. So we did see that in our research, but as you can see, that effect actually dwindles a little bit once we get past the 4-year bachelor's degree. But what you're seeing here is in gray, you're seeing the non-low income population. In orange, you're seeing the low income population, and then in blue, the overall population. And you're able to really see, how kind of those need-based programs, really assist with low income students. Next slide, please. And then we also looked at what the total amount of debt looks like, or the total amount of loans looks like for students at each level, and then also years within the bachelor degree level. So here we see the typical 3-year associate earner accrues $8,309 in total debt. But I think what you're really seeing in this slide is how important efficiency is to debt. Of course, with a 4-year bachelor's degree, you're looking at a median of $25,421 of total loans taking out at graduation. But you see that actually jumps quite a bit from the 5th year and then the 6th year. Not that we didn't expect this, but you can see that, you do save a lot of money the quicker that you actually receive your degree. And we were able to see that within our research. Next slide, please. And then we also looked at, the total debt by low income and non-low income. And we didn't see too much of a difference here. As you can see, it's actually similar between the low income and non-low income groups, as far as how much debt is taken out at graduate, or how much loan is taken out by graduation. So not too much of a difference here, but, even though low income students do receive more grants and scholarships, they are similar as far as taking out loans to non-low income students. And this is true, everywhere outside of the 3-year associate's degree. Next slide, please. And then what we also did, which is a little different than the first iteration, is we estimated what the loan payment would look like for graduates. And as you can see, similar to what we showed, with the overall debt amount, is that the less debt you take, of course, the lower that loan payment's going to be. And based on this loan payment, we, also tried to do other metrics like income to debt ratios, and tried to look at how much a student could actually pay depending on their early career earnings once they graduate. But here again, we see the same trend. Associate and diplomas or certificates, diplomas and associate degrees similar. And then with a 4-year bachelor's degree, of course, the loan payment is less than what it would be if you took 5 or 6 years to complete that bachelor's degree. Next slide. And then with this, of course, this is a very busy graph, but I think it has a lot of really, really good information. So I'm going to go ahead and turn it back over to Grace to go over the next few slides and finish up the presentation. So Grace.
Thank you, Travis. So from this graph, we see the cohort's annual earnings by credential level from 2011 to 2019. So it includes all wages, such as wages earned while enrolled in post-secondary. So the blue dotted line here represents the annual earnings of those students who only have a high school diploma without any post-secondary enrollment. And we used it as reference group here. So you can see those students began in 2011 with earnings above all other groups. As time goes on, each line has a place where it jumps up. So the purple line here represents for the annual earnings of 3-year associate degree earners. So the purple line jumps up in around 2014, which is about the year when they completed their associate degree. And the golden yellow line represents the annual earnings of those who earned their bachelor's degree in 4 years. They go from almost the lowest earnings in 2014 to the highest earnings in 2016, which is about a year after their graduation. And similar results for 5-year bachelor's degree and 6-year bachelor's degree. And going all the way to 2019, which is 8 years after high school graduation, we see that 4-year bachelor's earners earn the highest wages, followed by 5-year bachelor's earners and 3-year associate degree earners. And at the bottom are those with only a high school diploma and some college enrollment without credential. Now I'm going to take the previous 2 topics, loans and earnings, together to talk about affordability of each credential. So as we all know, for so many years, people have debated the question of what level of student loan debt should be considered affordable and reasonable. So debt to income analysis, which is ratio of total loan debts to borrowers' annual entry level earnings, has been used as an important method of assessing borrowers' ability to repay their loan debts. So according to previous studies, if the debt to income ratio is less than 1, then it's considered affordable. By affordable, we mean that the borrowers should be able to repay their loan debts in 10 years or less. So from this graph, we can see for students who completed their post-secondary certificate, diploma, and associate degree within 3 years, and students who earned their bachelor's degree in 4 years, their total loan debts seem to be affordable as their debt to income ratios are lower than 1. However, for students who complete their bachelor's degree in 5 and 6 years, their total loan debts found to be unaffordable as that debt to income ratios are greater than 1. But keep that in mind that when Travis was talking about the total loan accumulated at the completion, we see the total loan debts for 5-year and 6-year bachelor's degree are way more higher than the rest credential levels. And also we are using the annual entry level earnings here to calculate the affordability, which is 1 year after graduation. If we are using 3-year out or 5-year out, the findings might be different, but we do hope to examine that as we have more years of earnings to add for this cohort.
Now, and just a quick caveat to that. So, and you also notice that the trend for the 5 and 6 year baccalaureate degree earners, it was on a similar trend to the 4-year. So of course, they were in school longer, so it's going to take a little while longer to kind of meet to get to those same, to get to those same levels. So once we look at, as Grace alluded to, further down the road, then this 5 and 6 year, these 5-year bachelor and 6-year bachelor degree earners, I think that will probably also move into the affordable range. Go ahead, Grace. I'm sorry.
Travis, Grace, I'm sorry to interrupt. I have to drop here in a minute. Can we? I'm a big data nerd, and so I was hoping maybe Travis, Grace, you and I can maybe get offline because now's not the time to get into the details. I'd love to get into the back end details of this and ask some deeper questions. Now's not the right time, but I just want to put that. I'll send you guys an email, and I'd love to dive into this deeper.
I love that. That's
absolutely.
Travis and Grace, just let me make one statement here. I'm sorry. I don't want to slow you down. I like these data, of course, but it clearly looks, I guess, want the board to understand that a year out, the baccalaureate degree is still giving you the greatest return on investment, even when you look at the total debt and the annual earnings. Not that 2 years down the road, those 5 and 6 years, what they would do, just the predictability of this, they'll do exactly the same thing. The point being, though, is that it makes more sense for us to push the completion agenda at a faster rate when we look at policies toward return on investment. Is that a logical statement?
Thank you.
Absolutely.
Great. So for a more complete picture, so that burden should also take the variations in discipline into consideration. So this slide presents you the debt to income ratios for 4-year and 5-year bachelor's degree by discipline. So some disciplines for 6-year bachelor's degree were redacted because of small sample size. So we can only present the full picture of debt to income ratios across all the 7 disciplines for 4-year and 5-year bachelor's degree here. So we can see from this graph that arts, humanities, and social sciences are least affordable in comparison to other disciplines, as their debt to income ratios are among the highest ones, while health and STEM fields are considered the most affordable. And next slide presents you a key finding from the intergenerational mobility part of this report. So we use students' 2019 annual earnings to look at their economic mobility in comparison to their previous family income level. So in this sample, 13,615 is the 50th percentile of the 2019 annual earnings. So for any earnings that is above this amount, we consider it in a higher percentile. So from this graph, we see that the percent of low-income students who have a 2019 annual earnings in a higher percentile is smaller than that of non-low-income students almost across all the credential levels. However, the gap between low-income students and non-low-income students decreased from certificate, diploma to associate, and from associate to bachelor's degree. And if we look at the low-income students separately, we can say that the percent of low-income students with a 2019 annual earnings that is in a percentile, that is in a higher percentile, which is about this amount, increased as the educational attainment increased, ranging from about 41% for high school diploma to about 72% for a 5-year bachelor's degree. So the findings that I just mentioned here indicate the contribution of higher education to the upward income mobility. Yeah, so those are some of the key findings, highlights from this report. And we are hoping to release this report in September. So if you have any question, we are happy to take them.
Grace, I'm looking at this, and what's the range of the salaries on this last slide? Percentage above 50th percentile. The average was 31,615, as I see it.
Mhm.
What's the range of salaries, or what's the standard deviation? Same question.
Yeah, so that's a very good question. So for all the UR wage record, like by each credential level, so as long as there's a positive UR wage record, we'll include it. So here the 31,615 US dollars is median, like a typical, the 50th percentile. I need to go back to the data to find that information to you, but this is the most people that have amount, the amount that most people have. But that's a very good question to check the range, and especially the mean and standard deviation of the data sample when it comes to earnings. But I'll find that information, share with you later.
Well, and a previous slide where you had the disparity between STEM and arts and sciences or liberal arts salaries, that was significant.
I think Dr. Stat too, going back to that point that Grace made earlier about that we're looking at salaries 1 year out. And so I think particularly in this area, you know, to look further out might really change some of these numbers a bit. You know, all the research that we look at shows that students who graduate in the social sciences and arts and humanities start out certainly at a lower wage, but that changes over time as they grow in their careers.
Yeah, it should be noted, Lee, I'm glad you jumped in. What we see, Dr. Stat, when you look at those degrees, by the time they get to 20 years out, the data show that those folks are making far more money. Now, the reason why, they tend to go in management more. They tend to go in leadership roles more. So what I look at, those degrees have a longer arc, if you will, whereas many technical degrees and certificates, they have a shorter return on investment, but you need to be skilled up more on a regular basis to maintain wages. So that's why we need to be pushing for those certificates to be really stackable in a way that students can build off of it. So that's what you tend to find in the overall research.
Any other questions? Okay, thank you for your hard work. We look forward to seeing the follow-up at the board meeting. Now, rest of our meeting is going to be spent on our strategic agenda, the objectives and statewide strategies. So from there, today we plan to approve the proposed objectives for each of the strategic priorities And then staff are going to present some drafted statewide strategies and key performance metrics. So I'm going to turn it over to Lee to start our discussion. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. So I think we have a PowerPoint. Heather, can you pull that up? Great. So as Chair Harper mentioned, in past meetings, we have talked with the group about proposed objectives that would line up with each of the key strategic priority areas. Today, we are going to ask that you all formally adopt those. So that will be the first part of this strategic agenda update. So Heather, if you could move forward one slide. Yeah, next slide. Next. Okay, so as a reminder, and we shared this with you last time, just this is the structure of the agenda. Those boxes in blue, the group has formally adopted and approved. Today, we're going to ask for approval of the yellow boxes, the objectives. And then we're also going to introduce draft strategies for the group to consider. Also, we will share some key performance indicators with you. Next slide. So I'm not going to spend a lot of time on these. We certainly talked about them in depth at the last meeting and maybe even the meeting before that, but be happy to answer any questions. As you all may remember, the first strategic priority is around affordability, to make post-secondary education affordable for all Kentuckians. We have two objectives under affordability. The first is to reduce financial barriers, so real financial issues facing college students in terms of enrollment and completion. And the second is to really address the public's understanding of how to pay for college. We've talked a lot about issues around financial literacy, about the complexity of navigating how to pay for college. So really, as we begin to build out the agenda and build out strategies and action plans under each of the strategies, we propose to focus in those two objective areas. Are there any questions about these before we move to the next strategic priority area? Heather, if you'll take us to the next slide. So the second priority area is around transitions, to ensure more students successfully transition to college and are prepared to succeed. So the first objective is to increase students' readiness to enter post-secondary education. So we know that there are some significant challenges in ensuring that students are ready academically and socially to move into the post-secondary system. So this could be anything from early post-secondary opportunities like dual enrollment to summer bridge programming to really get students ready to make that transition. And the second objective is simply to be more strategic and thoughtful about recruitment efforts to increase enrollment in post-secondary education, not only for our traditional age students who are moving from our K-12 system, but also, as we've talked about many times before, Kentucky needs to engage our adult learners more in post-secondary education to ensure that they can advance in their careers and earn a living wage. Any questions about these two objectives?
Lee?
Yes.
I'm wondering on objective 2, and I don't know if this is a place to ask that, but we've talked about this before at previous committee meetings, but one of the concerns is that, or the discussion items is, at what point do some of the middle school, high school kids, when do they just tail off and get tired of education and just make up their mind and say, I'm done with school. Once I graduate, I'm done. Have y'all looked into that? Or, I mean, that seems to be a key question that needs to be answered before we look at enrolling more into post-secondary ed. And that's part of the equation anyway. So.
Well, you're exactly right. And we do know that those decisions are made in a student's mind a lot earlier than we would anticipate. You know, you begin to see, and President Thompson certainly can address this, and Dr. Ellis, but, you know, as early as elementary school, people deciding that additional education isn't for them. So certainly those outreach strategies need to start early. They need to be targeted to the age student that we're trying to impress. But Dr. Thompson, I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that.
I do. Richard, I think that's maybe a perfect question, to be honest with you, because this is right. And what we've known this through our Gear Up data. We've known this now for a while through the research we've done on student success, especially the P20 impact. We find out that students get disenchanted with school somewhere around the 6th or 7th grade, but it comes out and is expressed more in disengagement and even dropout around the 9th grade or 10th grade. But we find out by the time they get to that point, they've already kind of made some decisions in their mind. So your point is well taken here. So what we need to do here, we're doing this with our Gear Up, but we have to do it more systematically, as you all well know. I won't give a speech, Lee, I promise. But I mean, Richard's question, though, is the question we should be asking as a board. And that's what we're trying to do with it, once again, the Ed Continuum. But somehow we've got to get more impact in the 7th grade at least here. And that's what our Gear Up data shows us. Because you're right, by the time we try to recruit them in junior and senior year, most of them have already made up their mind. And in many cases, if they hadn't, even if they go to school, they may not be committed to that post-secondary education process. So they have a greater chance of even dropping out because of that. So I think that's an excellent question.
Actually, it seems to me that the parental issue has to enter into this too, because parents still have a significant influence over those kids.
Yeah, absolutely. Dr. Ellis, I don't know if you want to weigh in on this at all, or if you're still with us. I can't see your face.
No, I am, and I agree completely. And even with the parental outreach, it has to be friendly and not overwhelming. And they have to see, one of the research pieces, speaking to Dr. Thompson's points, is there's a study that came out called Opportunity Myth, and 96% of all third graders had a career goal or dream of something they would like to do, regardless of their socioeconomic status or race or ethnicity or their location, period. And we do lose them. And so we have to be intentional and strategic about our relevance and how we reach out and what it is we're sharing to show that students can see themselves in a post-secondary setting, that they are worthy, that they can do it, and that they're prepared. And so early on is better. And definitely there's been a lot of conversation around parental support and the information that is shared with them as well.
Yeah, I just want to say one other quick thing, and I won't give a dissertation because this is really a lot of my research and writing. What we find out is family support and community support has such a big impact on post-secondary outcomes. So what Lily is doing in the Student Success Collaborative, we are building out pieces of that. She'll work with Amanda in the P12 space and moving into post-secondary, but you're absolutely right. We also see parental inputs having big effects on college graduation, or when I should say family inputs, not just parental. They may not be any kin to them, but the people look at them as someone who supports them in a kin-like manner. So that is a piece of the round out we're going to do in our Student Success Collaborative that we've never been able to pick up before, which makes me very happy. So yeah, that's another good question.
Any other questions about these objectives before we move on? Heather, if you'll take us to the next area. So the third strategic priority area is student success. Ensure more students earn more high value degrees and credentials. So we have 3 objectives here. This is obviously the meat of our agenda, this area of student success. So a lot of work is going on. We've already talked to Lily, and Dr. Thompson has been able to build what we know will be a very successful student success collaborative to address some of these issues, and certainly the work of Dr. Bell and others. But the first is to increase persistence in and timely completion of post-secondary programs. And we'll talk about some strategies that we're going to propose to the committee in just a minute around each of these 3. The second is to maximize transfer of academic and experiential credit. So certainly we want to see more students being able to successfully transfer academic credit within our system, but also folks who come to a post-secondary institution with extensive job experience or military credit. We want to make sure that there is a smooth pathway for those folks as well. And then the third objective is to really look at this issue of quality, not just quantity, ensure academic offerings are high quality, relevant, and inclusive. And so again, Dr. Bell is going to speak to these objectives in more detail as we think about the strategies that will guide them. But these would be the higher level objectives that we would put before the committee for approval in this priority area. Any questions? Let's move on to the next priority area. This is talent. This is about increasing Kentucky's talent and innovation to support Kentucky's communities, employers, and the economy. So the first objective is very straightforward. We want to improve the career outcomes of post-secondary graduates. It's not enough to get them out the door. We want to get them into another door so that they are positioned to have, a strong, sustainable job and career. And then the second is really gets at the broader areas of mission of many of our institutions, which is about increasing research, innovation, and service to support strong communities and economies. So this is about the research mission of our campuses, and certainly the service mission of the campuses, not just to our communities, but a very strong service mission for existing and emerging businesses in the Commonwealth. Any questions about these objectives? So strategic priority 5 is all about the value proposition, improving the public's understanding that post-secondary education is key to greater opportunity and economic growth. So our first objective is really to build on the work that President Thompson has dedicated himself to over the past 3 years and even before that, really increasing the public belief in the power of post-secondary education. What can we do at the state level and in partnership with our campuses and others to really drive home the message that post-secondary education changes lives, and it changes communities, and it changes the state. And then the second objective is about building support for greater investment in post-secondary education. We had a breakthrough legislative session last year where we saw finally some additional state public investment in post-secondary education. We would certainly like to continue that, both public investment and private investment. So that's what that second objective is about. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the strategies that we're thinking about later on in the meeting. So are there any questions about these objectives? And if not, Madam Chair, these are the 11 objectives for the strategic agenda that staff recommends the committee approve.
Okay, we've reviewed the 11 objectives. Does anybody have any questions out there? Shall we make a motion to move them forward?
Well, I'll make a motion to approve them, but just a simple statement also, or comment, and that in some way, some of those objectives are kind of what I would consider chicken and the egg, which comes first, because educational attainment with community partners, that sort of thing. We know that Kentucky at times is held back economically because of hiring, because of the workforce. So we have to improve our workforce, but we need the help of the community as well. So it's a hard push, but it's well worth doing.
Dr. Stat, Chair Harper, you may want to get a second, but I do have one thing to say for Dr. Stat's statement. I'm sorry.
Second.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Further discussion.
Yes, Dr. Stat, you are absolutely right. That's the reason why I love these high-level strategies, because they have to work together. And I think what we've done, I won't say what we've done a lot in the past, but I think in the past we did many different strategies that wasn't holistic enough. if that makes sense.
Very
We know
much so.
that what we're here to do is directly correlate, and we have easily correlated at a high level, so much so it could be causal, the direct correlation between an educated workforce and a thriving economy. And higher education is the catalyst for all of that. It's also a catalyst for people not going to prison, people not being on welfare or Medicaid, people, I keep on going forever. So all of these strategies in my mind have to, that's why the big 4 priorities that these were designed around were designed for that in mind. So your observation is exactly right. It's not about predicting which one comes first, it's that they all have to work together in unison to create the whole. So that's why I like this agenda, to be honest with you. That's why I like these strategies. But at your point, I just wanted to validate and say you picked up on exactly the methodology, and that's correct.
Anything else further? We have a motion and a second. All those in favor to move the 11 objectives forward, say aye.
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 Any opposed, like sign? Thank you. Motion carries. All right. I'm trying to think. Lee, is there anything else?
Yes,
Yeah,
Chair Harper,
okay.
we're going to take a little more time. We want to begin to put on the table some draft strategies that would support each of these objectives. This is not for the committee's approval, but it certainly is for your feedback and your thought. Based on the research that we have done and the conversations we've had with you, campus partners and others, we feel like these state strategies that we're going to be sharing with you will allow us to advance each of the objectives that you just approved. So Heather, if you'll take us to the next slide. We're going to go through these fairly quickly. So what we're going to do is look at each priority area and just quickly talk about some draft state level strategies. And then Travis Muncie and Grace are going to talk about draft KPIs and context metrics in each of these priority areas. So you'll sort of see a package here. Again, we're not asking you to approve anything. These are state level. The campuses will also be asked to put together campus level strategies for each of the objectives, but look forward to any thoughts you have on these. So we just talked about objective 1 and objective 2. This is about college affordability. So in terms of reducing financial barriers to college enrollment and completion, certainly we have the power here to look at tuition and mandatory fee policy and practices. So one of the strategies would be to limit increases in tuition and mandatory fees at Kentucky's public colleges, universities. We also propose that one of the strategies be to work with campuses, the Kentucky Higher Education Assistance Authority, the legislature, and other state leaders to reduce unmet financial need. That could be in the form of state financial aid or institutional aid, or any number of strategies to really address this gap that many students have in paying for college, that unfortunately is being taken up by loans and other strategies, or keeping students out of college altogether. And then 3, increased opportunities for institutional collaboration. So it's not just about providing more financial aid, but it's also about moderating college costs. So we feel like at the state level that there are opportunities for institutional collaboration to reduce campus expenditures and limit increase in college costs. So for each of these high-level state strategies, we, over the next 6 months or so, would come to you with a more finely grained set of tactics or action plan associated with each one. But this is what we're thinking about right now with state level strategies for objective 1. For objective 2, when we're talking about improving the public's understanding about how to pay for college, we think there's more we can do at the state level to provide informational resources and advising strategies for all the folks who touch students as they think about going to colleges, teachers, counselors, community partners, et cetera. As you know, we really want to increase the number of Kentuckians who complete the free application for federal student aid, the FAFSA form. That is the first hurdle in ensuring that students enroll and get adequate financial aid to go to post-secondary. And we need to get more students filling out that form. So we feel like there's a number of action steps around that strategy that we can put into play. And then the third area is really establishing one or more state networks for high school counselors and other access professionals so that they can share practices, build expertise, so a community of practice that really brings folks together to help create a unified approach to improving the public's understanding of how to pay for college. That's a lot of information right now. Again, I'm mainly interested in your all's thoughts, feedback, or we can certainly come together at a later time and talk about any thoughts you have on these.
Lee, Grace and Travis's earlier presentation with the costs and the four-year, 5-year, 6-year, to me that's highly significant to this area, and the emphasis on completing it quickly saves so much money. That to me that's a very powerful issue.
You're absolutely right, and we debated on sort of where to put that within the structure of the agenda. And Melissa Bell is going to be speaking to college student success, and we're really emphasizing that timely completion in that area of the agenda. But you're exactly right. It's also a key affordability strategy, no question.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if nobody has any questions about these strategies, we're going to move to the KPIs that we're talking with the campuses about to measure this area.
I had a quick question on one of the strategies, Lee. We're talking about affordability. That's a key metric. One of the things we've talked about in the past is the simplicity of the application process, streamlining that, making it almost a no-brainer for the students in the high schools or senior year to be able to apply. Have we given much thought around just the flow of that, what that would look like? How do we make it really simple for them to apply? I mean, it's applying for college is daunting. I mean, and then you try to apply to 3, 4, 5 colleges. It is not for the faint of heart. So if there's so many obstacles just in the application process, what hope do we have of having a better outcome unless we address that?
You are absolutely correct. And I'm going to ask Dr. Ellis to speak to that because there's a lot of conversation going on. And in fact, in the agenda, we're specifically going to talk about some of those strategies in the transitions area. So the next area of the agenda. But Amanda, I don't know if you want to speak to that now.
Well, it's probably going to be captured, I think.
Yeah, we can wait for it. Yeah.
No, it's okay. Well, and to your point, Vidya, just about the affordability stuff, just a reminder that the FAFSA application is supposed to be simpler starting in 2023, and they finally passed that at the federal level, which we're grateful. I wish it wasn't 2023, but I'm grateful that they're finally changing it because that's a huge barrier for lots of families, which is why we're working really closely with Kia and other partners to increase the effectiveness of the outreach for families and the ability to do it and to not feel like it is a barrier because it's intimidating. But to the college application process, we get to work with Melissa Bell and her staff and have been talking a lot about early outreach with high school students. And Melissa, I think, and she can speak to this, had a really good conversation with the provost on Friday of us starting to do outreach of saying that you're eligible for applying for college. And then the next steps piece would have to be, and like I said, Melissa can speak to it, of making it much easier to apply. A lot of states have a common application. There's a lot of universities who don't like the common app. But I think that there are ways we can streamline and remove barriers, and we're moving in that direction in hopes of, somebody said in one of our breakout groups with the continuum is that the universities and the colleges can be rigorous, but their application process doesn't have to be. And so that's kind of what we're working towards. We're working directly with the Kentucky Department of Education and through their student data system to reach every single student. And in part of doing that, then we have to work with the higher ed folks on making it approachable and intuitive for the college application process. So Melissa, did you want to speak any more to that? Just because I wasn't able to be on the call on Friday, if there was anything brought up.
You did a very good job of summarizing it, and really the conversation focused on back to the earlier metric we were looking at was college going rates in Kentucky. They are low. And so with this letter, we are trying to get it into students' mind. Hey, you have met the minimum admissions requirement by state law. Our state regulation, which CPE is in charge of, sets the minimum admissions regulation. Vidya, to your point, what we next need to do is look at those structural barriers to the admissions process, and we absolutely do have a plan to do that.
Okay, I mean, I'm just stating the obvious here. We're addressing a lot of obstacles, but the number one obstacle is, them obviously knowing that they're eligible, but also really making it possible for them to apply. Just knowing that they're eligible is not going to make them apply, because if they get to a website that looks complicated and convoluted and they have to do the same thing 3 or 4 times over and over again, they'll quit in the middle of the process. So I feel like, the priority of something like that needs to be now, because it's just, we're probably losing a lot of people. We don't even know, we're not tracking how many people are making it to the application portals of our universities and saying, oh my gosh, I don't want to do this. So I think that just really needs to get prioritized very, very high. I know you all are doing that. So that's why I said I'm stating the obvious. I'm preaching to the choir here. So.
We are, but one other point you're making, kinda, I think, I'm just going to say you're making it and agree with you.
I'm making it.
Is that it's just not, it's getting through the application, understanding all pieces of it, and not getting frustrated is one big thing. We've got to streamline that, no doubt. But the other thing too, it's amazing. And that's why I like what we're doing is the opt out of post-secondary instead of opting in. That helps tremendously. But another thing that helps too, with us getting these college and career advisors in place, that's the other thing. When a student has problems, no matter what it is, they can go to that person and say, help me to navigate this. And that college and career advisor should be able to call that campus and say, hey, here's a glitch that we're getting over and over again. Fix this glitch, right? So there's a lot of dynamics here, and it kind of goes back to Dr. Stat's earlier statement, is that this has to be done in a very holistic way. It's not, if we just fix one thing, that doesn't mean everything's fixed, right? And so your point's well taken. Even if we get them to the application, how do we get them through without getting so frustrated to a point of exhaustion? Right, or not being able to move forward. I can say a lot more about that once again, but I like your point.
I mean, wouldn't it be cool if they go to the website, it already knows who they are, and it says, here are the 4 colleges in Kentucky that would be a great fit for you. Click here to submit your application and click here to get your financial application started. I mean, think about the power of something like that. It's just a no-brainer for them. They're going to be like, let me try it. Right? So I don't have to do this and I don't have to do this. And we might still not end up at, a huge take rate, but even if we move the needle by 3 percentage points, 4 percentage points, we'd still be doing really well. So yeah, anything we need from a technology standpoint to enable that. I know you're looking for the budget and so on, Aaron. So I think that's really where, certainly if I can help, I'm happy to assist in any way that I can with that.
Seems like the NKU cybersecurity degree is sure going to be useful for these people.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, let's move on to the proposed indicators in the affordability area. Travis, if you could walk us through those.
Yeah, thanks, Lee. So we are well into the development of the KPIs for the different strategies. And one thing, as Lee mentioned earlier, or Lee mentioned before in previous meetings, was to really be able to, hone in on specific KPIs. So it's not necessarily about the amount of KPIs, but that we track, but I guess the quality of KPIs that we track. So we kind of split this up into two different levels. One is going to be, the KPI itself that will have a target attached to it, and we'll go through the target setting process. And then, context metrics that is really just there to provide context for the overall strategy and the key performance indicators. So the three main key performance indicators that we have discussed so far, and we think would do a good job of kind of, I guess, relaying progress in these areas, of course, is unmet financial need. That would be at the state and the campus level. And that unmet financial need would, we're going back and forth and kind of creating an operational definition around this. But, I think we've really settled on, expected family contribution, minus, so basically, COA, cost of attendance, minus expected family contribution, and then any grants or, need or financial aid for that student. But like I said, we're still kind of having that conversation. And then kind of as Dr. Stat alluded to, we also want some sort of efficiency component. So, we're going to go with a time to degree here, and this should look similar to the metric that we use on the students' right to know dashboard, where instead of doing a credits to degree, we look more at the actual time that it takes the student to complete that degree. And then, of course, the FAFSA completion rate. We're looking into kind of best methods on how to track that, what data samples to use, et cetera. Some of the context metrics that we think would make sense in this area. So just the overall tuition and mandatory fees at the campus level, the overarching median income at the state level. And then, of course, we need some way to track undergraduate debt, or even using something like we showed earlier with our return on investment report, some sort of ratio, debt to income ratio at both the state and campus level. So that's kind of our initial thoughts and process around KPIs KPIs and metrics that can be used around affordability.
Does anybody have any questions on those before we move to strategies under the transitions area? Okay, let's move forward. And Melissa Young is going to take us through these.
Thanks, Lee. So here are some ideas for state level strategies around smooth transitions for students into post-secondary. For objective one, to expand access to those early college opportunities, that's the dual credit, AP, IB, and other programs at the high school level that help prepare students. Develop digital resources to help students explore career interests and college options. And again, this is sort of getting at that idea of hooking students on the idea of college through their career interest and letting them explore through that avenue. And partner with public K-12 schools and institutions to provide more college outreach, really, and at an earlier age to help them plan for college. For the second objective, some of our state level strategies would be to enhance and promote college recruitment strategies with attention to underrepresented minority, adult, and low-income students. So this is really looking at innovative ways to recruit students, and especially those students who have been underserved. And work with K-12 and higher education providers to streamline and simplify the post-secondary admission processes. And I think Vidya had to take a call, but this really is the strategy that gets to her concern about that admission process, and that we need to streamline it for students so they don't find it so daunting. So does anybody have any questions about any of these? Remember again that the institutions will be asked to identify strategies also that they'll carry forward, but these are really focused on things that CPE can lead. Any questions here? Okay, if not, I will turn it over to, I think, Grace or Travis, I'm not sure, to talk about KPIs in this area.
Yeah, thank you, Melissa. So, and just to reiterate, we do have the cross-cutting strategy. So even though we don't have it specifically listed here, these metrics and KPIs will be broken out by, race, ethnicity, underrepresented minority status, low income, and then probably that intersection of URM and low income, for all of these KPIs that we set targets for. But in the transitions area, the main thing, we'll focus on is undergraduate enrollment. And like I said, that would be broken out in all of the different groups. And that does include adult students as well. So, we may not have a specific KPI, specific around adult students, but that's because we plan on including adult students as a subgroup in almost every KPI. So, that should give a wider range of how we can track the adult student. So undergraduate enrollment and also the college going rate. The undergraduate enrollment would be state and campus level, college going rate would be state level. And some of the context metrics around those would be the gateway course completion. So that would just be the proportion of students who complete a gateway course in, say, math or English within a certain time period. And that's kind of taking the place of the progressive underprepared, mostly just because that population is actually shrinking due to, the policies the policies in place, like the co-requisite policy, and also the change in the readiness policy. And then also, a context metric to track say dual credit, earned credit hours, both at the campus and state level. And then, we also discussed a way to maybe use our partnership with KY Stats to be able to look at something like maybe the proportion or percentage of high school seniors who actually took a dual credit course and to be able to track that over time. But that's like I said, the basic suite of KPIs and context metrics around transitions. Any questions?
Melissa Bell is going to take us through the strategies in the next area, student success.
Thank you, Lee. And yes, we can advance to the next slide. So as we've already pointed out a couple of times in this conversation, student success is really the heart of what we do here. We all want students to succeed, and we want to create environments in which students can grow academically and socially and really get the most out of their college experience. And student success is a really huge issue. So we've taken the opportunity here to really boil it down to three main objectives. So in terms of objective one, to increase persistence in and timely completion of post-secondary programs, this is so important because we know that the longer students stay in school, the more likely it is for life to get in the way and less likely they are to graduate. So at the state level, we can pursue several strategies here. So one thing we can do, and we're really good at it at CPE, is to take vast literature, the student success literature, find out what's happening in other states, find out what's happening at other institutions, and share those best practices with our campuses, but also new practices that are emerging and those that show promise. So we can really add value by doing this and providing resources, toolkits for our campuses to scale up some of these strategies. And our new Student Success Collaborative will be leading these efforts. We also want to focus on encouraging students to graduate on time. We implemented an initiative called 15 to Finish a few years ago, and the purpose was to encourage students. It was a communications campaign of sorts to take at least 15 credit hours each semester. But there's much more we can do in that area. And we particularly want to focus on efforts to promote equitable outcomes for underrepresented students of color and low-income students. So we already have For instance, the statewide diversity, equity, and inclusion policy, which has been incredibly successful, but we can really build on that and look at taking some strategies to scale. The second objective is, maximizing transfer and the use of experiential credit. Kentucky has a really good infrastructure for transfer. We've had a transfer policy that was actually ahead of its time. It's focused on student learning outcomes, not course-to-course equivalencies, and we've been highly successful, but we know we can do a lot more. And we truly don't know what the effects of the pandemic are right now. So it's foreseeable that transfer can be an even bigger issue in the next few years, with students starting at one institution and wanting to go to a different one. So one of the state level strategies is to partner with our post-secondary institutions to promote these transfer opportunities. And on the flip side of that, we want to work with institutions to reduce any barriers to transfer that may exist. Next slide, please.
Melissa,
Yes.
simple question. The partner with KCTCS and other posts, does that include the privates such as Bellarmine and that sort of thing? Does that agreement work there?
It does not. The statewide transfer policy is right now only for public institutions, but there is no reason that private institutions, if they want to accept it, we can work with the private institutions to be part of this. And we've actually explored those conversations in the past, but no one has really taken that final step of signing on.
Well, Dr. Staff, they may not have signed on, but years ago when we did the statewide seamless transfer, many of those private institutions jumped right into the middle of it. They did not let that pass them by. Although we don't have any control, quote unquote, over this, many are in fact able and happy to become a part of it.
And to that point, we know that the private institutions, or at least several of them, are really focusing on transfer students, whereas they haven't in the past.
Good. Thank you.
So the next objective deals with quality. So we don't just want students to graduate, we want them to have a high quality educational experience along the way. So in terms of state level strategies, first we want to ensure that both academic and co-curricular programs are high quality, relevant to both students and employers, and that they're clear and coherent and don't look like a jigsaw puzzle that students need to figure out. Another strategy is to focus on the essential skills that are important for post-graduation success. A lot of this work is going to revolve around the Kentucky graduate profile, which you're going to be hearing about a lot in the next few months and years, but that is a list of the 10 essential skills that every Kentucky graduate of a post-secondary institution should be able to demonstrate in the workplace. And last but not least, we really want to focus and ensure that our curricular and co-curricular offerings are focused on equity and inclusion. And with that, I think that is all in the student success portion.
Thanks, Melissa. And we definitely, we definitely have plenty of KPIs and metrics around student success. We do with our current agenda as well. But just to go over kind of a few that we have discussed. So of course we want to keep undergraduate degrees conferred both at the state and campus level. And that would be broken out by race, ethnicity, URM status, low income, et cetera. Graduation rates both at the state and campus level. So we would also keep that from the current strategic agenda. KCTCS to 4-year transfer. So currently that metric or that KPI is specific to associate degree earners. So we kind of want to expand that a little bit to look at all transfers from KCTCS institutions to 4-year transfers or to 4-year institutions. And we may, put some sort of credit hour threshold around that. And then a persistence rate. So that's a little bit of a change from just the retention rate. So, a persistence rate at the state level would look at any student persisting at any institution within the state. So even if they transfer out of their initial institution and transfer to another institution, but they're still enrolled in that following fall, then they would be included in that persistence rate. As far as context metrics, so, we would look at a credit completion ratio, high wage, high demand degrees, and of course STEM age, but we would look at the high wage, high demand degrees. Currently, we just look at those degrees in the context of KCTCS, but we would want to expand that to also look at, the four-year publics and look at the counts and trends around, the credentials conferred at those institutions. Then of course we would keep retention rate as a context metrics, which would be students who are retained from one fall to the next fall at the same institution. And we also want to put that quality piece there. So we would look at the proportion of programs with a required experiential learning component. And we are working on how we would collect those data from the institutions to be able to mark that at the program level and to look at those proportions overall to the institutions. Any questions around the KPIs and context metrics for success?
Just a little one, and that is for dual credit courses that are offered in the high school. Do we have enough qualified faculty to really promote and give that all it's worth?
No.
No, we don't.
No.
We don't. That is one of the challenges of certified staff that meet the criteria for accreditation to offer more dual credit. People are getting really creative with increasing opportunities and using online professors to reach schools that do not have a lot of teachers who are already qualified, who meet the qualification criteria.
Okay.
It is a challenge.
And Dr. Saad, I was going to answer that from a data standpoint. We do collect whether a dual credit course is being taught by a high school faculty or a post-secondary faculty. So hopefully in some of our future dual credit research projects, we'll be able to kind of see, look at any differences between the two, whether a dual credit course was taught, by a high school faculty or faculty from a post-secondary institution.
Because the quality issue and, the preparation quality is important there.
Absolutely. Any other questions around these KPIs? Okay.
Move on to the next area.
All right, well, this next area deals with talent. And I will say that since we have, now we have a dedicated staff person to this area, I think that we're excited to be able to do a little more at the state level around this. But we're hoping to work with campuses to include a work-based learning or other career relevant experience in all undergraduate programs. And this is something that Dr. Thompson has said repeatedly, that he would really like all students to have that experience before they graduate. So we'll be working on that. To strengthen campus-based career advising and development services that students now can voluntarily, go to the career services. We're hoping to beef that up a little. And facilitate meaningful partnerships between employers, community partners, and education providers to improve career relevance and accessibility of post-secondary programs. So really all of these strategies get at the work relevance of degrees. For the second objective, we will identify high growth, high demand, high wage industries by region, and then help target those programs to different areas to increase enrollment. So this is really using the data we have available at the state level on what is most in demand and making sure that we are able to satisfy that need with our colleges and universities. And finally, we hope to encourage research, campus-based business services, and community engagement that supports those high need areas. So we know, like we said before, that our campuses provide a lot of support to business and industry in their area. So this would maybe be, our role would be to serve as a connection point to help connect people with those high need industry leaders. So with that, I'll let Travis talk about some of the KPIs in this area.
And so, for the talent KPIs, we really want to look at those, employment outcomes, and that's what we have for our first KPI here. Is just employment outcomes at both the state and campus level, and that will probably just be an iteration of what we do in our current agenda, where we look at the percentage of associate and baccalaureate degree earners who are employed 1 year out after graduation, or if they're re-enrolled, in graduate school or something of that nature. And we may actually expand that to also include credential earners, just to get a wider or a better view. But we also wanted to include graduate and professional degrees and look at that at both the state and campus level. And also KCTCS Workforce Solutions. So with and we're going to work with KCTCS. They're currently working on internally kind of revamping that metric from its current iteration. So once that's ready, we'll talk with KCTCS, but we definitely want that, in the KPIs in some fashion. And then of course our attainment goal, at the state level, and we'll continue to update that as we run models and also, get that data out to you all, but that will be part of the talent area. As far as context metrics, so, we want to look at extramural research in high demand, high need areas, and also, forms of spinoff activities and startup activities. All right, any questions around talent?
Is this where the centers of excellence for the comprehensives fits in? In other words, statewide issues and that sort of thing, and quality. To me, it's a very good idea to have these centers of excellence. For instance, Moorhead and their space program, that sort of thing. Is that where this fits in?
It would, Dr. Stat. And I know that this is a key area of focus for Dr. Thompson. And, we are, we're having some conversations internally about the best place within the agenda to sort of put that. But I think, as we think about growing local and community and state economies and building up our talent pool, this is exactly where it ought to be.
Okay, because that to me that's a very good area for growth and excellence within the state.
Yeah. And we might want to be more specific in our strategies to address that. So I appreciate that comment. Let's move on to the last area. We might actually get you out on time. So the last area of the agenda is all about values we talked about before. We have one state level strategy when it comes to objective 1 to increase the public belief in the power of post-secondary education. And that's really about conducting, and it's a singular, we sort of put it out there as a singular public awareness campaign, but really it's going to be sort of multiple communication strategies to promote college going and elevate the importance of higher education to Kentucky's residents and economy. This has been an ongoing effort, but we see opportunities for a more collaborative approach around communications and a more aggressive approach over the next several years. So more to come on that. And then the second objective is about building greater support for investment in post-secondary education. So we really want to develop a cohesive communication strategy as we work with our various audiences in the General Assembly and other state policymakers that reinforces this ROI message that Grace and Travis talked about earlier, a reminder that post-secondary matters. It matters in terms of advancing every goal that the state is trying to put forward. So, and that would be a much more targeted effort. And then the second would be to recognize that public funding isn't the only way that we're going to continue to be able to support the work of the strategic agenda, that we need to continue to look more broadly. with foundations and other private funders to help advance this work. So that second strategy is really all about that. So that's what we're looking at in terms of the last area of the agenda. And Travis, I'm going to get you to finish things up by talking about our indicators in this area.
No problem. And yeah, so as far as KPIs around, value, so the two things we discussed was percent change in state general fund appropriations, and that would be at the state level, and that would kind of be at one end of the value proposition. And then we also talked, around the context metrics. That would include surveys with employers, alumni, prospective students. And then, to kind of take away from our ROI report, I think there's a lot of things we could use here around that, but, we could also do something or plan to do something around the median annual earnings and break that out by credential levels for recent graduates and keep that as a context metric. So it's just not something that comes out, as we create a new report, but it's something we track on an ongoing basis to really assist with communicating that value proposition. But those are the main, that's the main KPI, and then the context metrics around that for value.
Well, if there are no questions on the strategies and KPIs, and of course we'll revisit these at a future meeting, we'll go to the last slide, which is just a reminder of the timeline that this committee is going to be looking at to get us to final board approval of the agenda. So, we have a September meeting with our campus advisory committee. We actually have several meetings with the campus folks to talk about the agenda. We have our September 14th CPE meeting, where this committee will be providing a report to the full board about the development of the strategic agenda. We have two meetings in October 5th and October 29th. The first, we will ask you to approve the strategies and KPIs. We gave you the draft over to you today, but we'll have the more final version for your approval on the 5th. And you'll also review the first draft of the agenda, the narrative around it. October 29th, we'll ask for a review and approval, hopefully approval of the final draft agenda. And that draft agenda will be presented to the full board the following week at the November 5th meeting. I will say that this will not be the final laid out version of the agenda. That will happen before the end of the year. We wanted to make sure that everybody was good with the actual content before we began the layout process. But if that timeline works with folks, we'll continue on with that. As we mentioned before, we'd be happy to add a meeting if you feel like it would be useful to the group. Otherwise, we'll move forward with this timeline.
Great, thank you, Lee. Anybody have any thoughts on this timeline as proposed? If not, sounds like we're going to keep moving ahead. And so with no other questions today, that concludes the meeting. Thank you for hanging in there until the end and providing feedback on the next strategic plan. Our next scheduled meeting is October 5th. Heather, thank you for being behind the scenes. I know you're not feeling well, and I hope everybody could hear me today. I appreciate your all's time. Thank you all so much. Meeting is adjourned.
Thank you all.